Hey guys, SGD here. Sometimes you have an epiphany. Something finally dawns on you and you want to share it with the world. Today is one of those times. Balance is a word thrown around TCGs a lot. The meta isn't balanced. This card isn't balanced, etc. You know the drill. This word, balance. It's not really the right terminology. I do get what people mean, but they aren't articulating themselves correctly and it's creating a bit of a blurry image. They're using a catch-all when they mean something vaster in complexity. They want to get straight to the point instead of going in depth, clarifying exactly what they mean, despite the fact that going in depth would actually help the situation better. Balance doesn't really mean much just by itself. When people say they want a balanced design or card, what they really mean is they want a fair card. Something effective but not oppressive. Something appropriately costed to what it does and not given the opportunity to be abused or have its costs mean nothing in games with costs or in games that don't have costs. Something not wildly overpowered but in line with the current established pool. Something that helps you earn victory but doesn't hand it to you on a silver platter. Something that's appropriate in speed to its power and influence on the game state. Something that doesn't make your opponent feel like they've been cheated by excessively high power or abusive combinations that bypass parts of the game's design and force a situation where their opponents can't do anything, and this is all done with little efforts. Balance is really fairness. Most people want a fair game and to not feel bad after a game, let alone be discouraged from play, which is what they feel overpowered cards and combinations to do. Of course, not everyone wants this, which is a bit of a problem. Some people like the game going at the speed of sound, things handed to them, and everything interacting continuously. I was going to say something horribly condescending along the lines of implying these people are selfish and they just want to be oppressive to others so that they have no competition, and I still feel that way, but I'm not sure it's the correct way to articulate myself. But we'll get into that in a little while. It's a bit of a separate issue. When people say they want a balanced meta, it's a fair bit more complex. If one deck crushes everything else, but nothing about it is inherently unfair in terms of individual cards or combinations of cards, it's just the momentum it gets from the components functioning, it's balanced. The meta is boring, sure, but mirror mages are a test of skill and wit. No, what people mean by balanced in terms of meta is a diverse meta. I don't want to fight the same small pool of decks all the time, especially if they produce cheap wins and are imbalanced themselves. Whether the people that complain do play something oppressive is rather irrelevant. There is a very small chance that anyone really wants to play the same tiny pool of decks all day, for months on end. Not only this, but people want choice in what they can play. They don't want to have choice stripped from them by poor card design causing only a small pool of decks being viable. But that begs the question, when is a group of decks considered diverse? At what size does it stop being boring? It's more than 3, we know that. But when does it achieve diversity? 5? 10? All things considered, for a rotating format, 5 would be the goal point I feel is reasonable. Not too ambitious, but not so small that it becomes boring. But then comes a design problem. How do you make that many decks viable in a competitive foray and not allow for something to become too oppressive? This is a very big problem for R&D, keeping a diverse amount of decks viable so that the game isn't boring to play. Legacy and non-rotating formats are hard because the formats themselves are impractical due to having cards that shouldn't be interacting and weren't designed with each other in mind, doing just that, interacting, and that causing toxic situations. Something just toxic enough rises to the top, nothing else is allowed in. Of course bannings and limitings quell that, but it's simply too much workload, especially late on, to take every single card ever printed into account when designing new cards. More so for games that don't have restrictions on what cards can and can't interact because of deck construction restrictions. Of course you can just cripple the most powerful decks and power creep past it, which is pretty much what Yu-Gi-Oh does, but it's not the best way to handle things. Ideally, these games would be making everything to the power level already established and only crippling things when unforeseen combinations comes to light and just dominates. There is arguably no reason to cripple decks that are on par just to make room for new decks, as if new decks are entertaining enough, diversity should naturally happen. But all of this is an idealistic fantasy. Magic's Modern Extended comes to mind immediately when writing this. It will stagnate and newer things won't sell. Continuous power creep, with or without bannings, may not be the most palatable way to handle non-rotating games, but there aren't too many other viable options to them to continue to produce sales. This is veering off into another topic, but I suppose the same applies here for non-rotating games as it does rotating games. About 5 decks should be viable at any given time. These games all archetype like mad. It should be doable. Legacy formats, I don't know if it's right to expect very much from them, especially the more open the game is. Just hope the parent company kills off anything too oppressive to allow some resemblance of diversity to exist. Fair cards in diverse formats are directly linked to game speed, which is the point where you can no longer say people want anything because there are 2, if not more, separate groups with different opinions on the matter. What is the correct speed to one might be too fast or too slow to another. This is where the type of all players want X type mentalities just turn into a heated war, and I pity game developers. Who do you please? This is what I was talking about before when I was discussing fair cards. A card's power has direct impact upon the game state and how much faster it's over. This is why people such as myself prefer weaker cards as they result in a slower game. We perceive a slower and longer game as having more decisions inside of it and to be more satisfying. But there is also too slow. Others like games going blisteringly fast and consequently want cards on the very edge of what's acceptable. There is also too fast, which I think is a very real reality for a lot of games. Of course, the rational thing to do is compromise, middle of the road, but who decides what exactly is middle of the road? Which turn count are we aiming for? Of course, it varies by game too. R&D needs to find the sweet spot for the individual game and maintain it. A game too fast will turn off players who like a game going for a while. A game too slow will turn off players who want a game to be over with. Many games start too slow and go too far in the opposite direction. This is actually the only part of the game where the word balance is entirely applicable to the situation. I don't envy designers of any game. Keeping everyone happy is a task and a half. But we as players need to be more detailed in what we need and what we want from a game than just balanced. Balance doesn't really say anything when we are talking about ideal positions for the games to be in. But I hope today was more food for thought than anything. This has been SGD, and I'll see you guys next time.